Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan Speinar. I'm director of the Center on Global Economic Governance here at Columbia. I'm very pleased to be the chair of today's lecture. Just a few words about the Center on Global Economic Governance. We basically look at a variety of issues, including have a focus on productivity, economic growth, the role of economic policies, role of institutions in economic growth, and of course, to what extent we can go from the national level, where we normally think of policies, where policies are formulated, to the global level, where many of the phenomena nowadays take place, and many of the disturbances that we observe in the world economy originate. I'm also very pleased and would like to thank the Global Center, Columbia's Global Center in Santiago, Chile, that's co-sponsoring this speech today, and the Program on Economic Policy Management, which is located in SIPA and educates mid-career government and other officials and private sector individuals in graduate level at the master's level. The governance issues and productivity and growth are very intimately related, and our speaker today is eminently qualified to address this issue from the perspective of Chile, a country, I should note, which really has been the most successful economy in Latin America over the last several decades, the only one that has in fact managed to have a long period of sustained economic growth when you take a long-term perspective. So Luis Felipe Céspedes is the Minister of Economy, Development and Tourism in Chile. Before his current appointment, he was professor at the School of Business of Adolfo Ibáñez University. He has taught macroeconomic courses, international economics courses. He taught at the University of Chile and Catholic University of Chile. Between 2012 and 2014, he was also member of the Consejo Técnico de Inversiones, which produces reports, proposals, and statements regarding a number of issues from pension funds, unemployment, employment. In the public sector, Minister Céspedes served as coordinator of economic policies and chief economic advisor in the Chilean Ministry of Finance from 2006 to 2009. He also managed economic research at the Central Bank of Chile and published a number of research papers on international economics, was a guest researcher at the International Monetary Fund, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the economics department at Rutgers University. He holds a PhD in economics from the other school in New York here, New York University, and also holds a degree in economics from the Catholic University of Chile. So it's a pleasure to invite him here, and Minister Céspedes, come and take the floor.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you very much, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here and to be here to talk about, I think, it's very significant topic for all countries today in the world. If you look what's happened in the last ministerial meeting from the OECD countries, the topic was productivity for an inclusive growth. The main concern of all the ministers that were there is precisely how to raise productivity, how to increase productivity in our economies, and how to do it in a way in which we can also face the challenges in terms of inequality in our societies. And I think that is particularly important for an economy like the Chilean economy. And I'm going to talk about the challenges that we face on this front, and also the policies that we are implementing under the government of President Bachelet. But I think it's important to take into account the context that we have as the Chilean economy. And in the graph on the left side, you can see the increase in income per capita of Chile from 1990, since the return to democracy, and today. And you can see clearly that Chile experienced a very significant increase in income per capita, so close to $5,000 adjusted by purchasing power to $23,000. And that has been, I think, a tremendous increase in income per capita that has even gone well above the average for Latin America. And that also, if you look at it from the perspective of our income per capita compared to the US, you see that the gap between our two countries has decreased. Still, it's a very significant one. And if you think about the graphs are really, probably this is the PPT version and not the PDF version.
I can put the PDF up.
I think it's the PDF version because sometimes it's... So if you think about the factors that could explain this success in terms of economic development in Chile, I guess that we are going to agree that at least there are 4 pillars under which we can explain this performance. First one is quality of institutions. I think that Chile is recognized as a country that has been able to generate good. Yes, I think this is the one. Yes, thank you. Has been able to generate institutions that are designed with a long-term perspective and also with the idea of generating consensus in our economy. I think that is important. If you talk about institution for economic growth, it's institution of that type, you need to generate consensus in the society that allows you to have a permanent implementation of them and not to be every 4 years changing the different institutions. In the second element, I think, is macroeconomic policy framework. I think that this is also a very significant element in our strategy. If you look what happened in the late 70s, early 80s in Latin America, or even what happened during the 97-98 period with the Asian crisis, you're going to see that the macroeconomic policy response of our economy to a period, a significant external shock like the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, you're going to see that the macroeconomic policy response was completely different. And that is the result of generating good institutions on the monetary policy side. If you have an independent central bank, flexible exchange rate regime that allows your economy to have a shock absorber, and also fiscal policy. On the fiscal policy side, our economy is an economy that has been able to generate a unique fiscal position. If you measure by the net public debt, our country is a country in which we don't have public debt in net terms. Despite that, we continue working as a government in order to keep a very strict implementation of fiscal policy, because we think that that is an asset that doesn't belong to a coalition, but we think that belongs to the country. And also openness. We think that openness has been extremely important for our country. Chile has signed free trade agreement with 87% of what is produced today in the world. So you have access to those markets under very competitive conditions. And we think that that has been a factor behind the increase in productivity, for example, that we experienced in the 90s. So we think that openness is also extremely important in explaining this success. But also we face challenges. The most recent challenges that we face is a less favorable external scenario. The copper price reached almost $4 per pound in 2013, and now we see price of copper close to $2. So that obviously is a negative shock to our economy. If you look what is happening in terms of economic growth in the world, and we're talking about a very open economy, then also is a less favorable scenario regarding what we saw a few years ago. So we have a challenge in terms of being able to increase economic growth in the short run for our economy, and we understand that, and we can talk probably some of the questions that you're going to make are going to be related to this. But also we have a challenge, and I think this is, from the medium and long-term perspective, the main challenge that we have in our economy, to increase productivity. If you look the difference in productivity of labor productivity in Chile is today half the labor productivity for the average of the OECD countries. If you make a comparison between the US and the income per capita in the States and the income per capita in Chile, you're going to see that close to 40%, 45% of that difference in income per capita is explained by productivity, and in that case, total factor productivity. So we have a challenge in terms of increasing productivity. So the question is, what is the agenda that the government is implementing in order to face this challenge? I think it's fair to say, I'm going to just mention I'm going to concentrate on the productivity agenda that is under the Ministry of Economy. But I think it's fair to say that any strategy for the future in which you want to have or you want to increase productivity is going to be related somehow to education. Different levels, we can talk about training or skills. Education is crucial. Yes. I know that we can debate regarding the result, education, but I think that for us it's a very important element in a society that is very unequal, in a society in which the opportunities for different citizens are in a very significant way determined by the place in which you were born or the family in which you were born. So we think that education is crucial in that. The infrastructure agenda, Chile has advanced significantly in terms of infrastructure, but we still have to continue doing a significant effort in order to generate these public goods that is complementary to private investment, and therefore is necessary in order to continue fostering investment. Investment is crucial variable also in terms of economic growth. If you think the amount of capital per unit of output still is low compared to the US, we still need to have more investment in the economy. The energy agenda, I'm going to say something about the energy agenda, and I'm going to relate that to institutions in our country, and the productivity agenda. So we think that in order to increase productivity, we have to do different things. If you try to come up with policies in order to reduce productivity, you have to recognize that there's a lot of heterogeneity within that measure of productivity. And I think there we have a challenge, a significant challenge, a challenge for the academia, a challenge for the World Bank, for different institutions in terms of measuring productivity, trying to explain those differences in productivity, and then to try to do the mapping between the policies that you have to implement in order to reduce that gap. And I think that, again, what I'm going to tell you is the policy that we are implementing, but we acknowledge that we still have a long way to go in terms of measuring, in terms of evaluating the impact of each one of these instruments that we're using. But we have divided our strategy in four main areas. The first one is diversity and the diversification and sophistication of our economic structure. Chile is basically a natural resource exporter. And we have said that in order to do something regarding productivity, you can gain productivity by doing new things with higher levels of productivity. Now, my claim here is going to be that the sophistication, diversification of our economy is not something that we have to do walking away from natural resources, but using them as a platform for innovation, as a platform for research and development. That's going to be my claim regarding the way in which Chile can move into the direction of diversification and sophistication. Investment attraction, we think that foreign direct investment in this particular strategy can play a significant role, particularly because it can reduce the time in which you adopt new technologies, in which you generate the sophistication of the type of goods that you produce in your economy. Competition policy and competitiveness in general. Our economy requires more competition. And if you want to talk about innovation, you want to talk about productivity, if you don't have a competitive market, then you are not going to see increases in innovation. You're not going to be increases in R&D. And I guess that is something that we have to do in our economy. If you look any figure, 3/4 of all the R&D that is done in Chile is financed by public funds. 3/4 of all the R&D that is done in the OECD is financed for companies. And definitely our initial levels are pretty low. So we have to increase also those levels of research and development. And finally, I'm going to skip the institution dimension, democratization of entrepreneurship and innovation. Chile is a country, an unequal country. That inequality has different dimensions. And I think that one of the dimensions that it has is the fact that if you look at our entrepreneurs, they come from certain segment in our society. And if you want to use and you want to be effective in using all the talent of your people, you have to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation. We have to do. I already mentioned education. I'm just going to concentrate in these challenges, and I guess that here the logic for productivity is very significant. If you look all the research on this, if you are able to increase the amount of people, different people that go into an activity, that can have a significant impact on productivity. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about sophistication. This index shows the export sophistication index, and it shows clearly that Chile has a level of sophistication that is close, is associated to a lower middle income, which would be here, and if we want to move here, so we have a gap to fill. And now you can say, well, but this is a natural reserve-based economy, which is true, but we have here, this. Chile is one of the main exporters of food. We export every year $18 billion in food. And these are the different products. This is the agro-food export basket. Okay? And this is sort of how big this is. It tells you how important it is. And in case you have a product economic complexity index. But this is Chile. This is Netherlands. In the same area, agro-food export basket. So there's a clear difference between Chile and Netherlands. This is an area in which Chile has comparative advantage. Nobody can claim that this is the government selecting a sector in the economy and it's feeding the winners. No? This is an area in which we all agree. We all, the different types of economies in our society will say, yes, this is an area in which Chile has comparative advantage. But look, the difference in terms of its sophistication. So we can and we should use our natural resources, those areas in which we have some comparative advantage to begin with, and we can have a talk about or discussion regarding industrial policies. But we can start from this and say Chile needs to diversify the type of goods and services that it produces. And that is precisely our agenda. What we have done in this regard is to say we're going to select certain sectors in the economy in which we have some comparative advantage, in which we have high potential growth. We are going to work with the public sector, private sector, universities, in order to build a common vision regarding what we should do in order to increase productivity in those sectors. We work at the beginning, we concentrate our efforts in terms of the on the technology required to increase productivity in those sectors. We left for a second stage all what it was related to regulation, because we didn't want to do this a discussion on how the government, how the state is generating barriers or impediments for productivity. We wanted to concentrate in technology. We worked for 1 year in different sectors in the economy. I think, yes, all the sectors are, in all the sectors. We worked for 1 year, 1.5 years in some cases, to defining those areas, those programs to implement in order to increase productivity. And we present this strategic program to our country, to our society. Now, this type of stories that we are telling here is mining. For example, mining. Chile has 30% of world reserves in copper, 60% of Chilean export. But Chile export copper. Chile doesn't export mining. And that is a totally different story. Chile exports $500 million in goods and services associated with the mining sector. Australia exports $10 billion in goods and services associated with mining. We should do at least $4 billion. That's the type of challenge that we have in our economy. Second, underground mining. We have a huge challenge in terms of underground mining. The new level in El Teniente, the new level in Chuquicamata underground, Los Bronces that is a private company, or Andina, are going to have to be done under extreme conditions, extreme underground mining. That implies that you're going to have to think about technology, interoperability of different equipment. So you're going to have to start talking about engine, electrical, trucks, hydrogen. And then those technological challenges are today something that is especially particularly important in the case of our mining. And we have said that we have to use those challenges as a platform for innovation. And we are going to finance a fraction of all the research and development that it has to be done in those areas. We're going to bring private companies. We're going to bring different institutes from abroad in order, also domestically, to try to come up with new ideas, new technologies on this area. So we're basically going to fund a fraction of it. That's the logic of the strategic program, generating public goods that are going to be used in order to increase productivity, to start sophisticating our economic methods. Solar energy. I don't think we have solar energy here. Smart industry. No. Let me skip to this. Solar energy. Chile has the highest solar radiation in the world. High. In the last tender that we have for electricity, the price of solar energy went from $45 to $55, $60 per megawatt. That is a huge, huge, huge decrease in prices of energy associated to solar energy. In the previous one, we have marginal prices of $130. So there has been a significant reduction in the cost of energy associated to solar energy. But the panels that we use in order to take advantage of this high solar radiation, the high solar radiation in the world, are panels that has been built with technology built for Europe. So not necessarily is taking advantage of all the whole potential that we have with this high solar radiation in the world. So one of the things that we're going to do is to have a program, a specific program. Again, we're going to finance part of the program to generate new technology and photovoltaic panels in order to take advantage of this particular characteristic of Chile. But now you start thinking and you say, well, you have solar radiation, you have mining in the north of Chile. Then you can start talking about green mining. You can produce hydrogen in order to have those trucks in the mining sector being generated, those energies generated by hydrogen. If you are able to develop photovoltaic panels specific to high radiation, solar radiation, then you can go to prices of energy close to $25, $30 per megawatt. That is extremely competitive. And then you can start talking about lithium in the north of Chile, and you can say, well, you can store it, solar energy, and if you store it, solar energy, you can produce electricity, you can have electrical engines for the underground mining. And that is something that came up from the discussion with private companies. It was not us telling where to do this, or a government official in some office in Santiago telling this type of stories. It was the private sector, the ones, it was the universities, researchers would say, here we have an opportunity. And that's precisely what we're doing. In healthy food, the same thing. Chile exports today $3 billion in food. We can go to $36 billion based on new ingredients, functional ingredients, for example. All the functional food today is going to be something extremely important for the future. And Chile has particular conditions, given the temperature of the sea in Chile that is lower than other places, and that generate more omega-3 in our product, more phospholipids, and all that kind of stuff of functional goods that can increase value added in our products. But that's required the generation of public goods, the generation of innovation, technology adoption in the agricultural sector, sensor technology. So it requires public goods in order to be able to take advantage of all these opportunities. So smart industries for us is a crucial element because it's basically present in every of these sectors: tourism, agriculture, construction. The productivity of the construction sector in Chile is half. In fact, 47% of the productivity of the construction sector in the US. And we're not using technology in that sector to be able to increase the productivity level. So we're going to do something in terms of the digital platform. To generate a digital platform to increase productivity, we're going to use that, we're going to make mandatory to use that digital platform. That's something that the United Kingdom did some years ago. We're receiving support, and then for all the public investment, they're going to require to use this. And what we are hoping that is going to happen is that in the future they're going to use it for their own project, because you're going to have to do it for the public investment. So this is the logic of all these strategic programs that we're implementing. Now, bringing more foreign direct investment in these areas is also something that we should do. It's also important in terms of competition. You know that Jan has written on this, and this is an important part of our strategy. And so far, we had a passive strategy regarding foreign direct investment. We were basically waiting for investment to come in the mining sector, in the agricultural sector. So we were just waiting for investment to come. Now we are having an active strategy. We changed the legislation. Now we have a new institutionality called Invest Chile that is looking for companies to come to Chile. But now you say, well, if you want to bring new investment to Chile, probably you're going to face some problems. That the company is going to say, well, it would be fantastic to be in Chile, in the north of Chile, in the south of Chile, but you don't have the human capital that I need in order to make possible my investment. Or they say, you don't have the suppliers that I require in order to invest in your country. What we're saying is, what we did was to generate a set of instruments to try to solve this problem. To try to, for example, generate the specialized human capital or specific human capital required in certain areas. In areas, obviously, in which go into the direction of sophisticating our economic structure, or generating support for local suppliers in terms of technology adoption in order to make possible to increase the probability of a company that help us to increase the complexity of our economy to be more likely to have it in our economy. This is the whole strategy of investment attraction that we're implementing today. And I have different cases here. For example, Everest is a company that produces software in Temuco, in the south of Chile, a region that is a complicated region. That's a difficult issue always. But they're producing software from Temuco, which is a place in the south of Chile, for the rest of the world. And they say to us, we will love to invest more in Chile, in Temuco, but we need help in order to be able to get this professional, these people that is going to come to our company to produce more software. We signed an agreement with universities from the region, and now we are teaching, or the universities have made some changes to the curriculum, and now they're probably we're going to have close to 900 to 900 new programmers working in Everett based on this collaboration, generation of public goods. We have to increase our our everything that we do related to innovation and R&D. And if you look at the last World Economic Forum index, you're going to see that our ranking in all these areas are really low compared to what it should be. So we need to increase company spending on R&D. We need to have more intense of competition in our local markets. And I think that all these different indicators are connected. As I said before, you're not going to have more R&D if you have if your market is not competitive. So this is the reason why we are also implementing a huge set of new instruments in order to increase the incentives for innovation. And also we have some new legislation on a competition policy. In fact, we have moved to adopt the standards for the most developed jurisdiction in combating collusion and assessing mergers in the world. We think that this is crucial. With a long-term view, with a long-term perspective, but this institutionality is extremely important. We also have changed the conditions that we have today in terms of energy. Energy, a few years ago, was the main constraint for economic growth in Chile. Average price of energy of $130 per megawatt. In the last tender that we have an average price of $47.6 per megawatt, based on a clear institutional framework, and I think that the result here, and a significant fraction of that new energy coming into the system is non-renewable energy. So I think it's also pretty consistent with. Finally, because otherwise I'm not going to fulfill very fast. Chile needs to generate more inclusiveness in different areas. Entrepreneurship of innovation is one of them. I think that is a critical part of our story. Not thinking about the impact in the short run. We're not talking about 3, 4 years. We're talking about 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We have to move in this direction to give the opportunity to the talent that we have in Chile to be able to generate new ideas, and that is a democratization of entrepreneurship. We're generating. Our concept is to build ecosystem for entrepreneurship and innovation. It's not only seed capital, it's also co-work centers, it's also mentoring, it's also completing the finance change. You need early stage funds in order to scale up those startups with good ideas. So that is precisely that is propaganda, and we're number one in the index of entrepreneurial ecosystem in Latin America. And we also have to do something that I guess is extremely important. All the policies that I have mentioned are policies that you have to implement with a medium-term and long-term perspective. If we want to be successful in this, we're not going to be able to implement policies that are going to last the 4 years that an administration in Chile lasts. You have to do it with a medium, long-term perspective. We have to generate consensus. One of the logic of working with private institutions, with universities, was to generate common vision of what we should do in the future, and to make it more difficult for the next administration to say, we're going to stop this program. We want this to be implemented for the long run, because it's the only way in which they're going to have a real impact in our economy. And we also propose the creation of the National Productivity Commission, a commission that we think should be in charge of assessing the challenges in different areas in terms of productivity. Again, with the idea that this challenge in terms of productivity is a challenge that we have not only today, but we're going to have it in a continuous basis. So that is basically what we're doing today in terms of the productivity agenda in Chile. Thanks very much.
Okay, we have time for some questions, and maybe I'll start with a comment and a question, and then we can open it up. I think that Chile, as you've shown, is really impressive in terms of what it has achieved in terms of economic growth. You've also been amazingly good at showing that one doesn't have to have just traditional approaches, where, for instance, people always thought, you should get rid of agriculture, move to industry and services, and you've shown that through agriculture, you actually could be extremely good. And of course, compared to the example you gave, Netherlands, yes, one can go even further in that direction. But that itself was, quite impressive. Now, of course, what you outlined as a strategy, in a way, is a strategy for many countries in the world, or entire groups of countries, like the European Union, obviously wants to do the same. Mm-hmm. So, for you to succeed, you have to be, in a way, better at it than others. Could you tell us which, possibly 1, 2, 3 areas where you have been better, and that's why you've managed to grow so rapidly compared to others? Because that would give us even more kind of tangible sense of what it is. What was your key to success? Because you have been successful, and yet you're essentially operating in an area where everybody's trying to go: the research, development, entrepreneurship, and so on.
So we take one question and then, or
take one question, or we can collect a few questions. Maybe, let's collect a few questions. Yeah. I'll give you this so you can move around.
Minister, thank you for coming today. Our question. So you mentioned that the strategy Chile should take looking forward is leveraging on the industries where we already have some sort of competitive advantage. But the countries that today have competitive advantage on international levels, at some point in their history, they might not have had it, right? So they developed it from zero. So the question would be, do you think there's opportunities that Chile could look at new industries where we're not clearly having a competitive advantage today, but through the help of the state policies, we can actually gain that competitive advantage?
Let's take these two first, and then we continue. Regarding Jan's question, I think that Chile has been extremely successful in generating these 4 elements that I mentioned at the beginning. Macroeconomic stability, that is crucial if you want to bring foreign direct investment to your country, and quality of institution. At the end of the day, we face challenges as any country in the world. We face challenges, for example, in terms of financing a campaign. We, as a government, send a bill to Congress. We try to generate a consensus there in order to generate a new institutionality, and much more transparent institutionality with to finance also political parties and also campaigns. And we think this is a brand new institutionality that was done with a long-term perspective, with the degrees of consensus are required in this area in order to be successful. We are going to have to evaluate the new system. But I guess that is something that has been part of the way in which we implement public policy. So I think that's the second element that I guess is extremely important. If you have, for example, a sector like the mining sector, in which all the investment are going to last for several decades. So that institutionality is quite important. I think that openness has been extremely successful for us because it's true, generated significant competition for certain sectors in our economy, but allowed other sectors, wine industry, to have been extremely successful based on competition. So you have to start competing with other countries or with other companies, and it's not another other countries' companies, and then you have to innovate, you have to differentiate your product, and that's something that happened in the wine industry. We were extremely successful in the agricultural sector, in the salmon sector, but then you have and then there you have a good example of the challenges that we have. First, the generation of public goods, public research, at the end of the day, was the one that allowed to have salmon industry in Chile. It was the action of public institutions that generated technology in order to produce those salmon. And then you have the private sector investing in that. But then today we have a significant challenge in terms of research and development in those areas, to increase sustainability of all the economic activity there, to increase the research on food. So I think that there's an area there in which there's several areas in which we were successful based on these elements, openness, and again, access to markets without and in a very competitive way, with 87% of what is produced today in the world, is a tremendous advantage. But I guess, and this is related to the second question, that there are certain areas in which we can do much more in terms of productivity, and that we can use it as platforms for developing new comparative advantage. I believe in the concept of dynamic comparative advantage. But one of the things that I guess is pretty important in this, from the economic, from the political economy perspective, is to try to start generating a certain degree of consensus on the need to generate these public goods, to try to solve these coordination problems, to have a more active role by the state, by the government, in the solution of this problem, not only through horizontal policy, but also through vertical policy. And I guess that our strategy is to say, well, let's not start fighting regarding the sectors. Okay? As you can say, we can come up with different ideas on different sectors, no? But probably we have spent a long time fighting about that segment, with some economists also public policy in Chile saying, well, they're selecting, they're trying to pick the winners, and this is not. So we said, okay, let's try to avoid initially a discussion on this, because I don't think it's, and let's try to see if the technological challenges that we face in certain sectors in our economy could allow us to develop new sectors in our economy. Okay? Just think about solar energy. You say, well, photovoltaic panel. I don't know what's going to happen with this. Probably it's going to be something very positive, because when you talk to the private companies, they tell you, yes, I mean, it's very important to develop a specific technology for the high radiation that you have in Chile. But then you can jump from that first to export to other places in the world when you have higher solar radiation, or you can start thinking about green mining. So I guess that you start opening possibilities to move into different directions. If you do software for the mining sector, probably you're going to be able to do software for any other sector in the economy. So in a way, you can use that as a platform in order to diversify and sophisticate the economy. I agree with you that in a discussion regarding if there are other opportunities there that you can use, but we said let's try to use this as a platform to generate certain consensus and to move on. And then I think that naturally you're going to start having discussions regarding other sectors in the economy. But I think that the technology component in terms of challenges that we face in agriculture, in mining, in solar energy, even in tourism in terms of adoption of technology, are quite significant and can allow us to have a significant increase in productivity.
As a Brazilian, I always look to Chile
business council for Latin America for 8 years, and Chile has served to me as a model of inspiration. The Piñera reform for pension reforms was something that we tried to copy in Brazil and other Latin American countries. Your system of openness with the economy, which is a model for Latin America, I think Brazil is a very closed economy. When I look to Chile, well, that's the model we should follow. But look to more recent times. What changed in Chile? When Bachelet left the government in the first mandate, he had almost 90% of approval. Right now, it's below 20%. Education, that was a platform for Chile. Right now, even all after reform, from time to time, we see protests in the streets. Students are not happy with the education process. What went wrong to Chile? Why Chile, all of a sudden, even in ethical, I'm not going to use another word that's very popular in Brazil right now, or non-ethical behaviors, Chile is no longer the model. Please convey. I'm very humble. I want, as a Brazilian, to share with you my thought. I like to return to Brazil. Say, Chile is in the right track again.
Say one more and then
One over there.
Thank you for the insightful presentation. So I believe that there is consensus at the moment that any successful development strategy has to satisfy three conditions. One is that it has to ensure macroeconomic consistency, and in that perspective it has been doing well. And if these strategies exist, it will do even better because you will export more. But the question is, the first question is, what are the import requirements for this strategy, and how do you think it could affect macroeconomic consistency in Chile if it doesn't succeed? The second condition that is that a development strategy should ensure that there's technological progress, and in this sense this will also help. And the third one is that the structure of production should create full employment, and that establishes an interaction between the structure of production and the demographic structure, right? Because if we have a country that has a large endowment of unskilled labor, then the development strategy may be different in a country that has a different demographic structure. And for those of us who ignore the Chilean economy, maybe you could explain how this strategy would affect job creation across the whole demographic structure. So if there will be winners, losers. And the final question is related to the previous question, which is that Chile is many times considered as the good model, the successful case in Latin America, and governments from other countries, or in general, academics, people from other countries, believe that the Chilean experience should be replicated. You, of course, need to know the conditions in other countries. By you, as the Minister of Economy of Chile, you could probably say what you think are the specific conditions that are present in Chile that help Chile to achieve the outcomes you were describing, and maybe you could speculate or elaborate on whether you think those conditions are also present in the Latin American countries that involve Chile as a more.
let me start with this last set of group of questions, and then I will jump to the other question that you raised regarding your question of what went wrong with Chile. I'm going to say nothing, but then I'm going to explain why. Regarding the specific on why productivity is low in our country, and why productivity is low in Latin America in general, and why productivity is starting to be a factor that differentiates companies at the frontier and the other set of companies, even within developed economies. I think that there's a mix explanations for this. You have, for example, in our case, that I'm pretty sure that we're not using all the talent that we have in our economy. I think that the figures for the US, I think it's paper by Xie and Co. or something. they said, well, in 1950 in the U.S., 93% of lawyers and doctors were white men. In 2010, I don't remember the date, 53% of the doctors and lawyers were white men. You have an increase in women, and you have an increase in women, and you have an increase in black lawyers and doctors. They compute the increase in productivity associated to this increase in diversity. And they come up with a significant figure to increase productivity by 25% during that. And I guess that somehow in our countries, you don't have that diversity that is required in order to take full advantage of all the potential of the citizens in your society. And if you look, Chile is pretty clear. We all know from the place or the school that most of the managers in our companies have, the school of most of our managers. I think it's 5 schools. Okay? So I guess that one significant challenge that we have in Chile is to increase diversity. If you want to talk about innovation, you're not going to be successful if you don't have a diversity in the people that is basically thinking about this. And I guess that inclusiveness is something very important, and I think that explains the fraction. I guess also that is related to skills in different areas. You look the productivity of a small and medium-sized company in Chile compared to a large company. The productivity in Europe of a medium-sized company compared to a large company is close to 90%. You have some variance. Some medium-sized companies are as productive as large companies. The productivity of a medium-sized company in Chile compared to a large company is between 60 to 70%. It's much less. And if you go to a small company in Europe, that figure is 75%. 75% the productivity of a small company compared to a large company. In Chile, that figure is 25%. So you have to increase productivity in those units. You have to allow those units that can grow, allow them to grow. Managerial skills are a part of the story. I think there's a very good paper by Nick Bloom and co-authors in which they show that introducing very basic techniques in managerial capabilities can increase productivity in a very significant way. I think 30% increase productivity compared to a control group without you didn't apply the program. So I guess that there's something to do. What we are doing in Chile is that we have implemented these small business development centers. We have 35 across the country. We signed an agreement with the U.S. government to have to receive the technical support on this. We're implementing the same thing that has been implemented here in the U.S. since the President Carter period. So again, with the idea of increasing, providing those managerial skills to those entrepreneurs. But also, I think it's related, the productivity challenges is related to financing. When you have high interest rate, it's pretty difficult to talk about technological adoption. You have, if you can get a loan at very high interest rate for a maturity of 2 years. So again, we have to generate instruments that allow us to have that investment and to decrease interest rate. That one of the things to increase competition to banks in Chile, to financial institutions. We're working on that also, a new set of guarantees that allow us to have some results in terms of interest rate and not only in terms of access. But it's also given the opportunity to companies to export. In Chile, 2% of the export, direct export, are explained by small and medium-sized companies. You say, okay, well, you have copper. Okay, exclude copper. 4% of export are explained directly by small and medium-sized companies. That figure in Europe is 40%. So we have to grow and we have to increase much our intra-regional trade. You have to give the opportunity to those companies to look for new markets, to try to open new markets, to try to take advantage also of all this free trade agreement that we have. But it's also related to entrepreneurship of innovation. Of the 20 largest companies in the world, 5 of them didn't exist 25 years ago. From 20 largest companies in Chile, all of them exist 25, 35, 45, I think 55 years ago. So you need to generate all the opportunities to generate new companies, new ideas, new entrepreneurs, and that's what we call this ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation. You have salmon sector, agriculture sector in Chile, pays for $4.5 billion every year. And still, the amount of research and development that they do is really low. It's limited. And every year they lost $1 billion. $1 billion because some salmon died. Where it's a research in order to avoid those losses. Where it's the research and development to tackle that time. We think that we need to do much more on that. That's the reason why we're doing this. And in order to generate public goods, a platform to do this, not to replace the private sectors, but to generate condition infrastructure that allow these challenges to be tackled. You're totally right regarding what is the impact of this can have in terms of demographic, in terms of job creation. I guess foreign direct investment can play a role there. We can do much more in terms of trying to bring foreign direct investment that can have an impact in terms of employment and in terms of certain segment in our society. I guess that there's a lot to do there. We're just implementing this active policy. Probably we're going to have to start thinking about this issue in the future. But I totally agree with that challenge. Okay, let's talk about I think that what happened is that you went from $5,000 per capita in income per capita to $23,000 in income per capita. You increase your middle class in a very significant way. And by increasing the middle class implies that they are going to require some public goods because they will want obviously better education, they will want better health services. Some of the people is going into retirement, so pensions are very significant for them now. So I guess that we're facing precisely what happened when the country does well. Exactly. So the question is how we're going to face this, and I guess that the logic, the strategy on this, it must be to think that you need to continue implementing the good policies that we were implementing before. For us, openness is extremely important, and today in the world we're facing significant challenges in terms of support of openness. I think that there's some discussion in the US regarding the issue. We have said, for example, that we support TPP because we think it could generate additional benefit for us. We have said that we have to continue doing to be fiscally responsible. We're implementing an educational reform that is going to cost money, So we said, well, the only thing in which you can do that in a reasonable, in a responsible way, is to increase in taxes. And we had a huge discussion in Chile regarding the tax reform. But we all know that is pretty natural to happen. Here in the US in 2010, remember the discussion on taxes here. And you avoid that discussion. In Europe, we have plenty of cases of fiscal crisis based on the fact that you didn't want to reduce government spending or increasing taxes. Because politically it's quite difficult. And we said we have to do it. You can have a discussion regarding the instrument that you're implementing, is this the right instrument? But I guess it's pretty fair to say that it was a responsible thing to do, keeping one of the pillars that has been extremely important for us as a country. Now, we think that our strategy as a government is trying to generate all this institutionality, all this programs that somehow allow us to continue growing, but at the same time to try to increase inclusiveness in our society. Productivity, from the perspective of the ministry that I have to run, I think it's a very good, it's a very good element in the equation, because if you do double click to productivity, then you can start talking about small and medium-sized companies. You can start talking about entrepreneurship and innovation. You can start talking about the technological challenges in the mining sector, in the agricultural sector. So I think it can also help you to have a more constructive and positive discussion. But obviously, politically, that is always complicated.
I know that.
But we hope, hopefully, we're gonna be successful.
I think we're running out of time. Could we have time for one more question? How are we doing?
Yep. One more question.
One more question. All right, David will decide.
We've only heard from men so far. Any ladies have questions? No?
Hi, thank you very much, Minister, for your time today. I was so lucky to go in Vancouver University and the school were not connected. I'm from Spain. I was lucky to study in Vancouver University and industry were connected, which is France. You talked about university, you talked about the government and industry. I would like to know more, how do you plan on incentivizing universities so that they form students that are ready for the industrial market in Chile?
You want to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. Though inequality was decreasing in the last year in Chile, it can be argued that it's still at high levels. And some of the measures you are talking about, like openness and productivity through, for example, technological change that sometimes is skill-based, could be a threat for unskilled workers in Chile. And the first question would be, how present is inequality in the design of development policies or industrial policies? And the second would be, education plus trickle-down economics would be enough to fight inequality in Chile.
Okay, in terms of the education challenges that we have and the connection with the challenges on the productive side, I think that I'm going to tell you some instruments that we're implementing. I'm not telling you that those are the right instruments because you always have to evaluate. But I guess that one of the things that we are doing now is to try to do a proper connection between the requirements for companies in the sectors and what is being today produced or teach in universities and even in industrial schools. Under the logic of defining the set of skills that you need at the productive level and the set of skills that you are teaching in universities, we're generating sort of, we call it human capital transfer center. So we put companies, universities, industrial schools to work together and trying to define the set, or the companies defining the set of skills and doing the mapping between this and the curriculum in the universities and in the industrial school, and also trying to get a commitment for those companies. Because at the end of the day, you're going to make changes in all the educational curriculums, and you want to have some certainty that those kids are going to be at the end hired for those companies, and that is going to generate benefit to us. That's what we're doing today in the mining sector. We're also going to do it in the solar sector, and we're also going to do it in the agriculture sector in terms of the skills required to do this. Something that we did also with this company that I mentioned earlier that is producing software. That is the logic that we are using in this program. But there is more general question regarding the whole policy in the country that I think still needs to be addressed. I think that when you have different margins, you have different gaps in different areas. I think that training still is a good policy, but it's true that at some point you need to connect it. more with the opportunities that you're going to have in the labor market. I think that is still a challenge. And how this somehow can affect income distribution, my view is that if something is going to affect positive, why? Because at the end of the day, if you talk about increasing the productivity of a small and medium-sized company, imagine what you have that the productivity of the small companies is 25% the productivity of a large company. What does it mean in terms of the job that they're offering to the society? Salaries that they pay. The same thing for medium-sized companies. So if you are able to increase productivity in those companies, increase productivity in those sectors, it's going to have to translate as a fraction in better real wages. It also is going to generate more opportunities in different areas in the society, in different sectors, in different type of jobs. That I think is also related to the match that we want to do between skills of the young guy there with the type of jobs that he can access in the market. So I think that there's a possibility for us to have a positive impact on inequality, even though you have to recognize that you can have and tell a story with the technological progress is a skill bias, and then therefore you're going to have some winners. But again, if you look at our market, in Chile we have to increase competition. Let me give you one example. This is pottery market, pottery industry. Pottery. They collude, they have an agreement to production and to set prices in that market. They obtain profits, additional profit of close to $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion in a period of 15 years. They receive a fine, they have to pay a fine, $55 million. The incentive is quite clear, no? $1.5 billion in terms of additional profit, $55 million in terms of fine. We're changing completely that with the new bill that with the bill that was that's now it's a law. Collusion is going to be sanctioned with the double of the economic benefit that you obtain if you collude, or the 30% of the sales from the particular item that the good that you sell. So I guess that is also something very important. You have a lot of best places to increase competition in certain markets in our economy, and if you think in that, then you're generating the possibility of generating new actors in our economy. Sometimes people say, well, you have to change faces in the political, on the political side. No? We need new faces, we need new people. And then you look at our challenges in terms of new entrepreneurs, and they're present, the same companies, people. So I think that there's also a challenge. And I think that the net effect, which should be positive, but again, you have a point there. I think that we need to continue working in terms of measurement. We have to measure at the micro level, but with some aggregation, the productivity gaps that we have in our economies, that to try to then do a mapping with the policies that were implemented, and also to evaluate those policies, because at the end of the day we have to allocate resources to those different policies, and we will want to do it more in those that have a high impact in terms of increasing productivity, and also in terms of reducing inequality, increasing inclusivity.
There was one person who said, if you don't think that education solves inequality, try ignorancy.
Very good. Luis Felipe, thank you very much.